Mike Tyson is 58 years old now. He's rebuilt his life from nothing. He's worth an estimated $10 million through his cannabis company, podcast, and acting roles. He's learned to manage his money carefully. He's surrounded by people who genuinely care about him, not people who see him as a paycheck. He lives modestly compared to his peak years. No more mansions, no more Bengal tigers, no more 38-car collections. Just stability and peace. But when you ask Mike about the person who destroyed him financially, the person who stole his fortune and controlled his life for over a decade, he doesn't hesitate. Don King ruined me. Mike has said countless times. He stole everything. He used me. He manipulated me. And he did it all while pretending to be my friend. Mike earned over $300 million during his boxing career. By some estimates, closer to $400 million when you include endorsements and appearance fees. Today, he estimates Don King took over $100 million of that through fraudulent contracts, inflated promotional fees, and outright theft. Multiple lawsuits have proven it. Court documents have exposed it. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Don King entered Mike's life at the exact moment Mike was most vulnerable, right after Cus D'Amato died. If Cus was alive, Don King never gets near me, Mike has said. Cus would have seen through him immediately. Cus would have protected me. But Cus died, and I was 19 years old, with no one to guide me. And Don King saw that. He saw a kid with no father, no protection, and millions of dollars, and he moved in like a vulture. Today, Mike talks about Don King with a mixture of anger and acceptance. He knows he can never get back what King stole. But he also knows that without learning that lesson, he might never have become the man he is today. What happens when a 19-year-old loses his protector and a predator moves in? What happens when trust is weaponized and loyalty is bought? The answer is written in every dollar Don King took from Mike Tyson, and every year Mike spent under his control. Before Don King, before the theft, before the betrayal, Mike Tyson had Cus D'Amato. Cus had saved Mike from the streets of Brownsville, Brooklyn, when Mike was 13 years old. Cus became Mike's legal guardian, trained him in the peekaboo style, and promised him he'd be the youngest heavyweight champion in history. But more than that, Cus protected Mike. He kept the vultures away. The promoters who wanted to exploit Mike, the managers who wanted to control him, the hangers-on who wanted his money. Cus built a wall around Mike, and as long as Cus was alive, Mike was safe. But on November 4th, 1985, Cus D'Amato died. Mike was 19 years old, and the wall came down. After Cus died, Mike's management stayed in the hands of Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton, two men Cus had trusted. They continued Cus's plan. They protected Mike's finances. They scheduled his fights carefully, and they kept the wrong people away from him. For a while, Mike was still protected, but Don King was watching. And Don King was patient. King was the most powerful boxing promoter in the world. He'd promoted Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, and countless other champions. He was charismatic, manipulative, and ruthless. And when Cus died, King saw an opportunity. Mike Tyson was going to be the biggest star in boxing, and Don King wanted to control him. Don King started circling Mike Tyson in 1986, right after Cus died. King couldn't get to Mike directly because Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton controlled Mike's career. But King was patient. He knew how to play the long game. He'd done it with Ali. He'd done it with Holmes. And he'd do it with Mike. King befriended Mike. He showed up at Mike's fights. He sat ringside. He came to the locker room afterward. He told Mike stories about Ali and Holmes. He talked about the millions they'd made together. He promised Mike, "I can make you richer than any fighter in history. I can make you bigger than Ali. I can make you a billionaire." Mike, young and grieving the loss of Cus, was vulnerable to someone who seemed to believe in him the way Cus had. King played the role perfectly. He was charismatic. He was funny. He had that iconic hair and that booming voice. He called Mike my son. He told Mike he'd protect him the way Cus had. He told Mike, "I loved Cus. Cus was a great man, and I'll honor his memory by taking care of you." And slowly, Mike started to trust him. Mike wanted to believe someone cared about him the way Cus had, and King knew exactly what to say. In 1988, everything changed. Jim Jacobs died of leukemia in March 1988. Mike lost another father figure, and Don King moved in aggressively. King convinced Mike that Bill Caton, the remaining manager, didn't have Mike's best interests at heart. King told Mike that Caton was stealing from him, that Caton was holding him back. It wasn't true. But Mike, grieving and confused, believed it. By mid-1988, Don King had become Mike's primary promoter, and King started making moves. In February 1988, Mike married Robin Givens. The marriage was a disaster. Robin and her mother, Ruth Roper, controlled Mike's personal life and drained his finances. And while Mike was distracted by the chaos of his marriage, Don King was taking control of his professional life. King convinced Mike to sign new contracts that gave King a massive percentage of Mike's earnings. And Mike, overwhelmed and trusting King, signed without reading them carefully. By late 1988, Don King had control of Mike's career. But there was one problem: Kevin Rooney. Rooney had been Cus D'Amato's assistant trainer. After Cus died, Rooney became Mike's head trainer, and Rooney was loyal to Cus's vision. He trained Mike the way Cus had taught him. He kept Mike disciplined, and he didn't trust Don King. Rooney saw what King was doing. He saw the contracts. He saw the control. And he warned Mike. "Don King is using you," Rooney told Mike. "He's going to take everything." But King was in Mike's ear constantly. King told Mike that Rooney was jealous, that Rooney wanted credit for Mike's success, that Rooney was holding Mike back. And in December 1988, Don King convinced Mike to do the unthinkable. Mike fired Kevin Rooney. Firing Rooney was the final nail in the coffin. Rooney was the last link to Cus D'Amato, the last person who was protecting Mike's best interests. With Rooney gone, Don King had total control. King brought in new trainers who did what King told them to do. King controlled Mike's schedule, his fights, his money, and his life. And Mike, now completely isolated from everyone who'd ever truly cared about him, didn't even realize what had happened. He trusted Don King, and King used that trust to steal everything. Over the next decade, from 1988 to 1998, Don King systematically stole from Mike Tyson. Mike earned over $300 million during his career. He fought massive pay-per-view fights against Razor Ruddock, Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, and dozens of others. Each fight generated tens of millions of dollars. The 1996 fight against Bruce Seldon generated over $80 million in revenue. The first Holyfield fight in 1996 brought in over $100 million. But Mike never saw most of it. King's contracts gave him a percentage of everything Mike earned: promotional fees, managerial fees, expenses. The contracts were designed to drain Mike's earnings into King's pockets. King would take 30% off the top as a promoter. Then he'd charge Mike for training camps, even though Mike paid for them himself. He'd charge for publicity that never happened. He'd charge for security that didn't exist. And King added more. He inflated expenses grotesquely. A $5,000 expense would appear on Mike's accounting as $50,000. He charged Mike for things that didn't exist: private jets King used for himself, hotel suites for King's entourage, dinners and parties that King threw. All of it billed to Mike. He paid himself bonuses from Mike's purses without Mike's knowledge or approval. And Mike, who didn't understand the contracts and trusted King completely, didn't question it. Mike would sign papers King put in front of him without reading them. King would tell Mike, "This is standard, champ. Don't worry, I'm taking care of you." And Mike believed him. By the mid-1990s, Mike was broke despite earning hundreds of millions. He was fighting just to pay bills. He owed taxes, he owed creditors, and he couldn't understand where all the money had gone. "I was making $30 million a fight," Mike has said, "and I'd look at my bank account and there was nothing. I didn't know where it went. I trusted Don King, and he stole it all." King didn't just steal money. He stole Mike's prime. After Mike went to prison in 1992, King controlled Mike's comeback in 19... King promoted Mike's return fights, and King made sure every contract benefited King, not Mike. When Mike fought Peter McNeely in August 1995, The fight generated $96 million in pay-per-view revenue. Mike's purse was reported at $25 million, but after King took his cut after expenses, after fees, Mike walked away with a fraction of that, and King walked away with millions. By 1997, Mike was starting to see the truth. After the infamous earbite incident with Evander Holyfield, Mike's boxing license was revoked. He couldn't fight for over a year, and during that time, Mike finally looked at his finances. What he saw shocked him. Despite earning over $200 million by that point, Mike had almost nothing. He owed millions in taxes. His mansions were mortgaged. His cars were leased. And Don King had tens of millions in his accounts. Mike confronted King, and King did what he always did. He lied. He blamed other people. He showed Mike inflated expense reports. He told Mike the money was being managed properly. But Mike didn't believe him anymore. In 1998, Mike Tyson sued Don King for $100 million, claiming fraud and breach of contract. The lawsuit was explosive. Mike's lawyers presented evidence that King had systematically defrauded Mike for years, inflated expenses, fake contracts, payments to King that had no justification. The case was supposed to go to trial. But in 2004, after years of legal battles, Mike and King settled. King paid Mike $14 million. It was a fraction of what King had stolen. But Mike was exhausted. He needed money, and he settled. I should have gotten $100 million, Mike has said, but King had lawyers. He had money. He had power. And I was broke, so I took the $14 million and moved on. But I'll never forget what he did to me. Even after the lawsuit, the damage was done. By 2003, Mike Tyson was bankrupt. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, claiming $23 million in debt. He owed the IRS $13 million. He owed creditors millions more. His assets were seized, his mansions were sold, his cars were repossessed, and Mike, at 37 years old, was forced to keep fighting just to survive financially. In 2002, he fought Lennox Lewis and made $17 million. It was gone within months. In 2005, he fought Kevin McBride in what would be his final fight. Mike lost and quit on his stool. And after that fight, Mike retired from boxing. He was broke, broken, and starting over from nothing. Don King had taken everything. The money, the prime years, the legacy, and Mike was left with nothing but regret. Don King destroyed me financially. Mike has said, he stole from me. He used me, and he did it all while smiling and calling me his son. If Cuss was alive, none of that happens. Cuss would have protected me, but Cuss died, and I trusted the wrong person. That's on me. But Don King is a thief, and everyone in boxing knows it. Mike Tyson is 58 years old now. He rebuilt his life from scratch. After retiring in 2005, Mike hit rock bottom. He was broke, addicted to drugs, and suicidal. But slowly, Mike got sober. He went to therapy. He started rebuilding. He launched a one-man show on Broadway. He appeared in movies. He started a podcast. And in 2016, he launched Tyson 2.0, a cannabis company that's now worth millions. Today, Mike is worth an estimated $10 million. It's a fraction of what he should have, but it's his, and nobody is stealing from him anymore. When the topic of Don King comes up, Mike is brutally honest. Don King is a thief, he said in interviews. He stole over $100 million from me. He used me when I was vulnerable. He manipulated me, and he got away with it. But I don't hate him anymore. I've moved on. I've rebuilt, and I'll never let anyone do that to me again. Mike also reflects on what might have been if Cuss had lived. If Cuss was alive, Don King never gets near me, Mike says. Cuss would have seen through him. Cuss would have protected me. But Cuss died, and I was a kid with no father, and King used that. He saw a vulnerable kid with millions of dollars, and he stole it all. Don King didn't just steal money from Mike Tyson. He stole something more valuable: protection, guidance, and trust. When Cus D'Amato died in 1985, Mike lost his protector, and Don King moved into that void. He pretended to be Mike's protector. He called Mike his son. He promised to take care of him, and then he robbed him blind. Over a decade, King took over $100 million from Mike through fraudulent contracts and inflated fees. Multiple lawsuits have proven it. In 1998, Mike sued King for $100 million. The case settled in 2004 for $14 million, a fraction of what was stolen. But the real theft wasn't the money. It was the betrayal. Mike trusted King the way he trusted Cuss, and King used that trust to destroy Mike financially. The question that haunts Mike's legacy is simple. What would have happened if Cuss D'Amato had lived? If Cuss had been there to protect Mike from Don King? If Cuss had been there to keep Kevin Rooney as trainer? If Cuss had been there to manage Mike's money? Would Mike still have earned $300 million and kept most of it? Would Mike be worth hundreds of millions today? We'll never know. But we do know this: the day Cuss died, Mike became vulnerable. And Don King saw that vulnerability and exploited it for over a decade. Here's the final question. If Cuss D'Amato had lived to protect Mike from Don King, how much richer would Mike be today? The answer is we'll never know. But we do know that Don King stole over $100 million from Mike Tyson, and that theft was only possible because Cuss D'Amato wasn't there to stop it. The man who saved Mike couldn't protect him forever, and the vultures were waiting.